paper. I'm going to read you a piece of paper. It's going to be a joke. It's going to be good. And at the end of it, we're going to launch and we're going to talk about the part 2 of hidden blood pressure causes and the absurdity of what I'm going to read you today is the absurdity that you're going to experience. Yeah, the absurdity of what you're going to be experiencing through this hidden causes of blood pressure and the ridiculousness of it all. Okay, here we go. So this is a conversation between St. Francis and God up in heaven, looking down on earth. We ready for it? Here we go. So St. Francis comes to God and says, you know all about gardens and nature, or God comes to St. Francis and said, you know all about gardens and nature. What in the world is going down there in the Midwest? What happened to the dandelions, the violets, the thistles, and the stuff I started eons ago? I had a perfect no-maintenance garden plan. Those plants grow in any type of soil. Butterflies, honeybees, flocks of songbirds all go to get their nectar. They're long-lasting. I expected to see a vast garden of colors by now, but all I see are these little green rectangles. What's up with all the little green rectangles? St. Francis says, it's the tribes that settled there, Lord, the suburbanites. They started calling your flowers weeds and went to great lengths to kill them to replace them with grass. God said, grass? But it's so boring. It's not colorful. It doesn't attract butterflies, birds, or bees, only grubs and sodworms. It's temperamental with temperatures. Do these suburbanites really want all that grass down there? Apparently so, Lord. They go to great pains to grow it and keep it green. They begin each spring by fertilizing the grass and poisoning any other plant that crops up. God says, well, the spring rains and the warm weather probably make that grass grow really fast. That must make the suburbanites really, really happy. St. Francis says, apparently not, so, Lord. As soon as it grows just a little bit, they start cutting it, sometimes twice a week. God says, they cut it. They're cutting it. Do they bale it like hay? St. Francis says, not exactly, Lord. Most of them rake it up and put it in bags. God said, they bag it? Oh, I bet they sell it like a cash crop. Do they sell it? St. Francis says, no, sir, just the opposite. They pay to throw it away. God says, now let me get this straight. Hold on. They fertilize the grass so that when it does grow, they cut it off. And then they pay to throw it away. St. Francis says, yes, sir, that's right. I don't know, but that's right. God says, these suburbanites must be relieved in the summer when we cut back the rain and turn up the heat. That surely slows the growth and saves them a lot of work. St. Francis says, you're not going to believe this, Lord. When the grass stops growing so fast, they drag out hoses and pay more money to water it so they can continue to mow it, continue to grow it, continue to pay to get rid of it. God says, what nonsense. At least they kept some of the trees. That was a sheer stroke of genius, if I do say so myself. The trees grow leaves in the spring to provide beauty and shade in the summer. In the autumn, in the fall, they fall to the ground and form a natural blanket to keep the moisture of the soil, to protect the trees and the bushes. Plus, as they rot, they leave compost to enhance the soil. It's a natural circle of life. St. Francis says, you better sit down, Lord. The suburbanites, they draw on a new circle of life. As soon as the leaves fall, they rake them up, put them into great piles, and they pay to have them hauled away. God says, no. What do they do to protect the shrub and the tree roots from the winter? He said, after throwing away the leaves, they go out and they buy something they call mulch. And they put it around the trees and the bushes. He says, well, where do they get this mulch? St. Francis says they cut down trees and they chop them up into pieces. They grind them up, and that's mulch. God says, enough. I don't want to think about this anymore. Let's roll that intro. Are we rolling the intro? Is it rolling?
Liz, ¿puedes poner el video?
Cool. No, that was a little long this morning, but it goes too good with today's presentation. So I believe y'all will believe it's worth it.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And goodbye. The joke was so long, we're done. See you guys later. That was our show. Our entire show today was the joke.
Hey, you know, honestly, Vince, it's almost, so the absurdity of the longness of the joke, the absurdity of the content of the joke is the absurdity that people have high blood pressure.
Yes. Yes. And that's what we're going to hear today. Before we get to that, I've got to ask Andrea Villa, how are you today?
I am the way I say I am, Vince, and today I'm inspired by challenges.
Woo-wee. I love it. You are inspired by challenges, but more important than that, you are the way you say you are. Next question goes to Mr. Sorel. Sorel, where are you today? Where are you?
Vince, in every moment I check, as disappointed as I may be, I am right here.
Right.
I am right here, right where I'm supposed to be.
Right here. That's what I'm talking about. That's what you can affect. And Mr. Giovanni, what time is it, my man? What time is it?
Now.
Time to rake the grass.
Now.
Or put down the mulch.
The time is
I
now.
almost said that myself in that moment.
Now, the time is now.
Time is now. Rawlin, my partner, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be doing something that absolutely transforms people's lives.
Amen.
I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that.
Amen. And I am grateful to do that with you. And I'm grateful to have you as a partner because we are changing people's lives. I guess, so today is going to be part 2 of our 4-part blood pressure series. Last week, if you were watching last week, and I hope if you are watching us now and you were not on the Daily Huddle last week, go back in the Facebook group of the Daily Huddle and watch last week's session. Because what I shared with you last week is how your blood pressure is affected by eating saturated fats. Because when you eat foods that are high in saturated fats, which is every animal-based food, meat, cheese, fish, dairy, eggs. When you eat those foods, the saturated fat gets into the bloodstream and it increases the viscosity of your blood. That means it makes your blood thick like molasses. And without it, your blood is thin like water. And I showed a video of that blood circulating through your arteries, and you could see, you can visually see that what I call sludge blood.
Who remembers saying that last week? Wave.
Sludge blood, blood where the viscosity is high. I actually have obtained a video that shows when your blood has increased level of viscosity, it literally slows down, and that in and of itself raises blood pressure. Now that was part one. Today is part two. Before I go into today's cause of high blood pressure, I'm going to throw it to my partner, Rawlin Vanatta, who has a few things to say as a preparation for what I'm going to share with you. Rawlin, go
I'm
ahead.
setting Vince up. That's what I'm doing. I'm getting him ready. I'm setting up a domino and he's going to knock it down. That's what's going to happen. All right. So, so the first one, you know, Vince called sludge blood, and nobody, if you see that video, you definitely don't want sludge blood in your veins. Has anybody ever been told, if they have high blood pressure, or heard somebody that have high blood pressure been told, hey, you need to cut back on that sodium, cut back on that salt? Yeah, wave at me if that's the case. That's right. Okay. Now, the funny thing is that's the one, so there's 4 hidden causes of high blood pressure, right? So why in the world? So today's presentation is really about sodium saturation. So why would we talk about sodium saturation if everybody just raised their hand and already knew that salt was a reason, a cause, right? Sodium was a cause. So why would I call it a hidden cause? Well, you're going to learn something today, folks. All right. So, 2 things. I'm going to tell you, if you forget about salt being even a cause, or sodium being a cause, if you only get rid of the first cause, which we talked about last week, the third cause that we'll talk about next week, or the fourth cause that we talk about week after next, then you ain't got to worry about your salt. Not really, not generally speaking, because the other ones are so much more impactful on your blood pressure that it's absurd for everybody to be talking about salt. But today, Vince is going to share the science behind why salt does, in fact, increase your blood pressure. But how many people that you know have high blood pressure, and then people tell them to watch their salts, and they are saying, no, I don't need to salt this, I don't know that, but they still have to take blood pressure medicine? Wave at me if you've ever had anybody, if you've ever seen anybody trying to watch their salt, but for whatever reason, they're still having to take the blood pressure medicine. Well, in our 5-day challenge, last one we had, we're in one right now, we had a man get off his blood pressure medicine in 5 days. And guess what we told him he could have? Salt. Think about the absurdity of that, right? But what we told him not to do is to avoid, I said, sprinkle stuff on, use salt on the table. That's cool. Here's the deal. What we told him is this. We told him to remove, to get rid of part 1 that y'all learned about last week, to get rid of part 3 and get rid of part 4. Boom, blood pressure plummeted. And in the process of doing the other things, your sodium level automatically decreases like mad, because the astronomical large amount of sodium that you get in your system is not from the salt that you salt with your foods. It comes from what was already there. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's the real interesting thing. Most of it comes pumped full from chicken. Most of your sodium comes from cheese. Most of your sodium comes from boxed, prepared, prepackaged food. That's where most of your sodium, a drastic, huge amount. How they make cheese, cheese is like bacterial growth, congealed, molded stuff, right? That's what it is. That's the reason why it smells like feet, right? So you take that, right? You take that, and to stop that from continually happening, to keep it from completely rotting, they take buckets of salt in the factories and they dump buckets of salt on the cheese to stop that process from happening, so that they can ship it to you. Okay? In the restaurant industry, when I was in the restaurant industry, this is what happened to me. In the restaurant industry, first year, I remember this conversation. I said, I need some boneless, skinless chicken tenders for the restaurant. He said, but they come in 40-pound boxes. How many you want? I said, give me 2 or 3. He said, okay. He said, but here's the question. Do you want the chicken that's bigger, that costs less, and everybody will want to come back and eat more of? Or do you want the chicken tenders that are tiny, cost way more money, and nobody will like them? And they're more expensive. Which one do you think I chose as a business owner, right? So I get the bigger, and I said, well, what's the difference? He said the chicken that's pumped full of sodium and salt water. That's the ones you want. They don't shrink as much in the fryer. They don't shrink as much when you cook them. They taste saltier. They taste more seasoned. They'll trigger the cravings better for your customers. They'll be bigger. People will feel like they're getting more for their money. And they're really getting salt water. So those meats that you're eating are already pumped full. Many of them are already pumped full of salt, sodium. And so people are saying, I'm going to avoid my salt shaker. Like, you don't know how much is already pumped in there. Those Campbell noodle chicken soup, you don't know how much is in there, right? All right. So Vince Rountree, but here's the deal. So when you are removing that your saturated blood, your sodium saturated blood, sludge blood, sodium saturated. Think about that. Sludge blood, sodium saturated. Those are the two. There's the first 2 hidden causes. Hidden causes the fact that they're in the meat and the cheese and the processed food more than they're in the table salt that you got on. But so yes, sodium does increase your blood pressure. Vince Rountree, why does sodium increase your blood pressure?
Okay, thank you for that setup. The reason why sodium and salt increases your blood pressure is because sodium is a hydrophilic agent. That's why. I'm done.
There you go. Fancy words going on here.
What does that mean? That means that sodium hydro, water, philic, it likes water. So sodium attracts water. And what I want you to understand is that the volume of blood that is circulating through your veins and arteries is not constant. The quantity of blood that's in it's not a fixed amount. It goes up and down. The number of pints of blood, it goes up and down. Think about this for a second. Every time you urinate, where in your body did that urine come from? Well, it came out of the bladder. Okay. How did it get into the bladder? Well, it was filtered out in the kidneys. You following me? Right? So what's the purpose of the kidneys? The purpose of the kidneys is to filter out waste, liquid waste, from where? From your blood. Oh, so when you urinate, you're actually expelling excess liquid from your blood. Because the purpose of your kidneys is to remove waste liquid from the blood. It pulls out that waste liquid and fills up the bladder where you've got time to, where it holds more liquid, and that starts to build up until your bladder gets full, then you got to run to the bathroom and you empty it out. But what you are urinating is liquid waste that came from the blood. Now, why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because I want you to get a visual indication that the liquid that you are urinating came from your blood. So the volume of liquid that is in your blood, the actual volume of blood that you have, that volume went down. Every time the kidney remove some liquid waste, now you've got actual less liquid circulating throughout your veins and arteries. Does that make sense? Are you following me? Okay, so what determines how much blood that do you have circulating throughout your system? And the answer is the more sodium that you consume, the more liquid blood that you have circulating. So when you consume a high sodium diet, you could have as much as 10 pints of blood circulating throughout your system. When you eat a low sodium diet, you could have 8 pints of blood circulating throughout your system. And if you have 10 pints circulating versus 8 pints circulating, which one do you think has more pressure? If everything else is the same. If you have a higher volume circulating, there's going to be more pressure in the system if everything else stays the same. So the reason why doctors will tell you to eat a low sodium diet is to lower the volume of liquid blood circulating throughout your body. And so that is the reason why. Now, you compare that to what Rawlin just explained to you. And if you have the endeavor of eating a low sodium diet, and you say, well, I just won't sprinkle salt on any of my food, you've probably eliminated 8% of your salt intake, maybe less. Because if you are eating chicken, as Rawlin explained, that chicken was pumped full of brine before it even got to the grocery store, before it got to the restaurant. Why? Because when chicken producers sell to wholesalers, they sell it on a price per pound basis. So the more it weighs, the more they get for it. So it makes sense if you're in the chicken business to pump the chicken full of brine, because the sodium brine is what? Hydrophilic. It likes water. So when you pump it full of brine, it absorbs more water. And as it does the same thing in your veins and arteries, and as it absorbs more water, now instead of selling what would be, let's call it 20 pounds of chicken, even if they just get 22 pounds that they can sell it for, that makes a big difference when you're selling thousands and thousands of pounds. I mean, just even 10% more. Could you imagine running a business and you can increase your revenue by 10% just by pumping cheap brine in it?
And the chicken lasts longer raw because salt is a preservative.
So you've got an added benefit. So in other words, if you were in the chicken business, you'd be a fool not to do it. There is a business. So what that means is, and when you go to the store, do you really care? Of course you don't. You just want chicken that tastes good. So you don't care. So the public doesn't care. So if there is no economic pressure not to do something, it will be done. And you are getting a lot of it without knowing. Then when it gets to the restaurant, do you think that the restaurant manufacturer is going to put more sodium in it when they're cooking it? So you have got this chicken that from the manufacturer have brine in it. Then when it's cooked, it's put more salt in it. And you think that just by not sprinkling salt on the plate, that you're cutting back on your sodium. And it's coming before you even got it. Chicken, cheese, packaged foods. super high in sodium. Super high in sodium. If you are trying to eat a low sodium diet and you just stop sprinkling salt on your food, you might reduce it by 7%. And people that try to lower their blood pressure that way, I cut back on my salt, nothing happened. Because you only think you're cutting back on the salt. You really aren't. It's not your fault. I mean, you don't know. How in the world are you supposed to know that the chicken was pumped with brine from the manufacturer? If you don't know somebody in the business or done some studying that way, I mean, no, the general public in general doesn't know that. But I just wanted you to understand that it is because of the hydrophilic nature of the sodium that attracts water, and more liquid that is in your blood, the higher the pressure. All right, I now looking at it's 26 minutes after the hour. Sorry for going so long.
Do we have any final questions?
Questions, comments? Did this make sense? Was this just hogwash, or was this any ahas?
I think Gio was going to say
perfect sense. The human race is doomed. I mean, everything is pumped full of brine. Is that the case?
Meat, right? Because meat in general is sold on a per pound basis, right? So and I know chicken more than anything. I don't know how much. And I believe pork as well. I know pork is loaded with sodium. So, yeah, it's economically a brilliant thing to do. So by just eliminating meat and cheese from your diet, you are not only are you eliminating the saturated fat from the sludge bugs that we talked about, you are also cutting back tremendously on the amount of sodium. So that's the takeaway that I want you to get from today's message of the hidden secret part 2.
That's right. And part 3 will actually, so Vince made a slight comment on part 2. He made a comment. He said, if everything remains the same, when you put that 10 pikes versus 8, if everything else remains the same, then the pressure goes up. Part 3, we'll talk to you about how to not make that system be if everything else remains the same, which is really exciting. It's really, really exciting.
You can change the system.
We're going to change the system. That's right. You're gonna learn how to either have a stiff system or a flexible system, and we're going to talk about that and what is actually causing it to be stiff, like a steel pipe versus a flexible balloon and all those arteries. So that's exciting. Gio, did you have something? You look like you had something on your mind before we close out.
Yes, no, I just think this is brilliant. And I think that, I just think this is brilliant. I think that for me, at least, the image of the blood pressure and what I am doing, unknowingly to keep the pressure high, right? And the image of seeing my system working really hard because I'm keeping all this sodium, and it just makes so much sense, so much sense. And I just wow, this is really important information to, I don't know why in the world it's a secret. Jesus, I'm not a dumb guy and I've never really heard it. You know what I mean? So this is beautiful. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. The understanding.
Hey, Ronald has something. Let him speak because we're so close to time. That's okay.
Just a quick comment. I mean, if the show today really defined my why, you guys been talking about just, your why, you guys hit it really hard today that it defined the why today for me. So, because it's clear, I mean, it makes more sense from the economic status, from the chicken factory to the restaurant table or to my kitchen table. It just makes so much sense to me. So I'm just giving it up to you guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Cece has her hand up. Go ahead, Cece.
Hey, everybody. I had a question about the bioengineered ingredients. Can you hear me?
I can.
And what does it play? Because corn chips is all processed. So we wouldn't eat that because it's filled with salt.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I do not eat meat or cheese or dairy anymore, what could we create as a grain other than rice and beans that's suitable, and potatoes?
Vance?
So
Do you have a question?
yeah, so I'm not sure if your question has to do with what other food options are there, or if your question is around bioengineered additives and preservatives.
I think her point is like, so if you're looking for other grains, a lot of them are like, a lot of packaged foods are, they're bioengineered, but they say whole grains and stuff, but they have so much sodium, you don't want to do that. So what else could you, is that close, CC?
Correct. Yes.
All right, cool. So like oats, granola, like a real clean granola is really great. If you're looking for something crunchy, it's hard to find a really good one, but you can find them. Really like any of the whole grains, like you can go to Google and type in whole grain and you can find all the different types of whole grains, and you can make your own little trail mix or something with it. If you like order or buy like at a Whole Food store, the different kinds. And I hope that's helpful. As far as just buying out of a package is very difficult. It's very difficult.
It is.
It's almost impossible.
That's right.
Because it's not shelf stable. It will rot
right.
because it's not pumped with stuff. And that's the benefit. I mean, that's the benefit for when it comes to, it's not like the chicken manufacturers are pure evil. Like, because it's like, if I don't do this, I will literally go out of business because everyone else is. I have to do it to compete. It's not a choice. Because everything I would be selling would ruin faster, taste not as good, and be smaller, right? So like when you're putting it to the consumers, what's the consumer's going to buy? The thing that's going to rot faster? The thing, it's like when it's sitting on the counter and it's like got green mold on it. It's like, no, I think I'll choose the other one. So, it's like, it's just a symptom of trying to make meat, fish, dairy, eggs, oil, food in general, not rot, taste good, compete monetarily, economically. It's not always just like the evil people that are selling stuff. It's just a symptom. It's like it's a bad bug it's a bad bug in the details of what happens, just as the economics work on it. So it's our job to just make ourselves aware so that we know what we should do. So I hope that's helpful to everybody. Vince, you've got the rest of it, whatever you got to do to close us out.
All right. I just want to ask, I don't know if Ron has his hand up again or if he still had it up from the past.
It's just one quick comment. I mean, in the world of eating meat, so the organic meat, if you were to raise your own chicken and really making sure you know what it eats and so on, no grime, nothing gets in there. I mean, it's kind of hard to do the transition of not eating meat at all. But if you do know what you raise your own chicken, would that be a little bit more satisfactory than eating, at a restaurant?
By far, it would be better. It no question would be better, right? If you know what you're feeding it and you're not pumping it. I mean, it would absolutely be better. However, if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, if you're dealing with heart disease, if you're dealing with elevated cholesterol, you still can't avoid the saturated fat. And the saturated fat is raising your cholesterol. The saturated fat is causing type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes. It's causing fatty liver disease. It's causing atherosclerosis, which then can lead to heart attack or stroke or erectile dysfunction. So you still wouldn't be avoiding those things, but you would be avoiding the added brine. You would be avoiding the added stuffs and the added chemicals and the better feed. And it would be it would absolutely be better, but your body was designed to run on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And when you eat it, and when you eat those foods, your body thrives.
You wouldn't be bagging the leaves, but you would still be fertilizing the grass, watering the grass, cutting the grass, bagging the grass, paying for the grass to be tilled, and putting mulch down. You just wouldn't be raking the leaves. Okay.
I knew that 10-minute joke would come into play at some point. Good job. All right. I apologize, Daily Huddle family, that it is 9:36 in the East anyway, 36 minutes after the hour, 8:36 if you're in Central Time. So we've gone 6 minutes over.
Blame me. It was my long joke.
It was absolutely the cause. The long joke is what just set everything off. But I love my partner and it fit. So I want you to understand that you only have one body in this lifetime. If you don't take care of it, where are you going to live? You only have one body in this lifetime. So eat as though your life depends on it, because it does. My name is Vince Rountree. Rawlin Vanatta is my co-partner. And thank you for watching us on the Daily Huddle today.
Thank you, Vince, Rawlin. Thank you, guys. Thank you, family.
Yes, sir.
Our pleasure.